So it is no secret that Manchester United are in the transfer market for a new central midfielder or a defensive midfielder in the summer or the winter transfer window. Manchester United has been really looking for a midfielder, but it has always been emphasized that Manchester United do not want to buy a short-term midfielder. Manchester United wants to get a midfielder that is going to be important for the club, both in the short term and in the long term. And there has been several names that has been reported that Manchester United are interested in, but there has been a very consistent name over the past 12 months, and that player is actually Adam Wharton. Adam Wharton is a 20-year-old from Crystal Palace. He has been really doing well. He has been one of the most brightest stars, young stars in the Premier League. He's just 22 though. He has a lot of qualities. And in this video today, we are going to be analyzing all the characters, all the attributes of Adam Wharton, because personally, he's a player that I would love to play for Manchester United. He's a very good player. He's a very polished player, technical player. So definitely in this video, we are going to be analyzing all the qualities, the strengths and weaknesses of Adam Wharton off and on the ball. So guys, let's dive into this video together and analyze all the attributes of Adam Wharton. So guys, let's actually talk about the heading or the aerial ability of Adam Wharton. Definitely from a statistical point of view, you're going to find out that he just wins 32% of his aerial duels, which is really low for a central or defensive midfielder, because definitely in the Ruben Amorim system and in the Premier League as a whole, and as a central midfielder, you should have at least a serviceable aerial ability in the Premier League, because you tend to go through a lot of physical dominance, physical challenges. So definitely you need to have a polished aerial ability, but that's really one of the weakest parts of the profile of Adam Wharton, because most of the times he doesn't really get his headers right. And one thing I like about his headers is that he's not just a player that is just being bullied and a player that is just being shrinked during aerial challenges. He's a player that tends to compete, but he just tends to come up second best. From the eye test, he's a player that tends to compete most of the times for aerial deals. His issue with this aerial deals is not really about the bravery, but about sometimes the timing. Most of the times he misjudges the flight of the ball. Most of the times short players like Andres Pereira in the Premier League tends to lift more than him when it comes to winning aerial deals. So the issue of Adam Wharton in his aerial deals is not really about him meeting those headers. Most of the times he's not just being consistent. Most of the times he doesn't meet the headers, and for the fact that he's not really consistent in it, and for the fact that he's not being bullied, we cannot really call it a strength or a weakness in his game, but it is definitely serviceable, and it is something that we can really work with as a central midfielder. So it's really going to be hard talking about Adam Wharton without talking about his goal scoring ability. Definitely from the start, you're going to find out that he's not really a natural goal scorer, as he just generates 0.02 xg per 90 minutes with a shot accuracy of just under 19%, which is lower than that of a Declan Rice or Kobbie Mainoo. He's not really good in goal scoring. And when you talk about his volume, when you talk about the shot accuracy, when you talk about the touches in the box, when you talk about the average shot per distance, you're also going to find out that he ranks amongst the lowest percentile of central midfielders in Europe. So that tells you that he's not really a player that actually scores a lot of goals in the Premier League. And also his data does not paint him as somebody that poses a lot of threats from outside of the box, or a player that actually runs from long distances to score cutbacks. He's not that kind of player. But from his eye test, you're going to find out that he poses a lot of untapped potential, especially from his days in Blackburn Rovers. He's very composed in front of goal. He's a player that knows how to score whenever he gets into the position. He shoots with a lot of precision and a lot of power whenever he gets his shots right, and he's a player that can be able to shoot from distance with both his right and his left foot. He's quite consistent in shooting most of the times from outside of the box. But also you're going to find out that his volleys are not really that refined. He's a player that I see that can be able to score like 5 to 10 goals in the Premier League, but that's if he's going to be really nurtured and really coached to be that kind of goal scoring midfielder. Now, the dribbling of Adam Wharton is definitely one of his biggest strengths of his profile, and from a statistical point of view, you're going to find out that he has like 52% successful take on with a ball progression runs rate per 90 of 0.91. That actually tells you that he's a player that likes to dribble a lot. He's a player that is very calculative, and it's very nice when he actually dribbles. And also from the data, you're also going to find out that he's not really that progressive in terms of his dribble like a kind of a Kobbie Mainoo, but he's a player that actually ranks in the 99 percentiles of central midfielders in Europe with with a lot of good successful takeons. And whilst his dribbling accuracy and dribbling ability is actually solid, I think the execution is more better because in the eye test you're going to find out that his dribbling is not like at the level of that of a McAllister or Joshua Kimmich, but you're going to find out that whenever he chooses to dribble, he dribbles very well. He's very calculative, he's very assertive as when to dribble, and it's not really a bulldozer when it comes to dribbling like he kind of Richard Royce or Elliot Anderson, but he's a player that dribbles with a lot of technical ability, with a lot of high IQ. He's a player that uses this dropping of shoulders. He tries to manipulate in tight spaces because he has a very immaculate first touch, so that really helps him to evade pressure. He's a player that likes to dribble with a kind of style, with a kind of swag. So this is why I really like the dribbling of Adam Wharton, because he seems not to really do too much. Dribbling for him is just really easy, and he tries to glide past his opponent with some kind of subtle precision and accuracy. So when they talk about the dribbling of Adam Wharton, overall he's a player that you can really vouch for when it comes to dribbling, because I think his eye test is even more better than the stats and the data points of view, because from the eye test you're going to find out that he's a player that has really created a lot for the Crystal Palace midfield in terms of his dribbling, because most of the times he tries to anticipate where the players is. He's not a player that tends to run 50-60 yards with a lot of pace and transition, but he just really moves. He seems to move with this kind of slowness, this kind of style, this kinds of easiness that really reminds me of a Moses Ozil. So statistically, in terms of possession, I think the passes of Adam Wharton is really mediocre and average, because he just averages just under 40 passes per 90 minutes with an accuracy of 75%, and that is actually different from the likes of Joshua Kimmich, which averages 86 passes per 90 minutes and with a far more better accuracy. And this is actually understandable because in the Crystal Palace system, they prioritize a fast transition style in the kind of low block system. So whenever a player holds a ball, he just prioritizes sheer progression, and he tries to progress the ball as much as possible. And this explains the fact why Adam Wharton has more progressive passes than a kind of Zubimendi, because he plays in a fast transition style other than the kind of Martin Zubimendi that plays in a more controlled style. So Adam Wharton is actually a player that I know that his passing ability is definitely going to improve if he plays in a more controlled style, if he plays in a more controlled environment where he's actually a tempo setter, where he is the one that actually tends to detect the tempo of the play. He actually detects on how the teams actually plays. And in terms of eye test, his first instinct is actually ball progression. He doesn't seem to dwell on the ball for a very long time, because based on the system of Crystal Palace, you have to be really brave on the ball as a central midfielder. So Wharton tends to be very brave. He tends to play the ball first time, and this most of the time makes his passes to be loose. Most of the times his passes is not accurate because he tends to play the ball first time. And if you look at the play of Adam Wharton in terms of possession, you're going to find out that there's a clear evidence of a very wonderful footballing IQ, because he's very good in scanning, he's very good in anticipating a lot of pressure, and he tends to wriggle out of pressure a lot of the time. So in terms of his possession play, I think that he's going to be really more refined and more technical if he plays in a controlled style, a possession based control style kind of system, whereby he tends to control the position of the play. He tends to detect the play from a very deep position. So I feel that he's definitely going to improve and get really more refined when he plays in a team that doesn't depend on just sheer ball progression. So when talking about the creativity of Adam Wharton from a statistical point of view, you're going to find out that he's above average. He's really modest in terms of creativity, and he plays more through balls more than the kind of Bruno Guimaraes. And when you look at his volume, and if you compare his volume in terms of good midfielders in the Premier League, like the likes of Rice, Moses Caicedo and Kobbie Mainoo, you're going to find out that he plays more progressive passes than them, which actually tells you that he's actually well below average. And unlike the kind of Declan Rice that has most of his assists coming from set pieces and set plays, I think Adam Wharton is the player that has most of his assists coming from open play. And in terms of short pitching actions, key passes and through balls, he's actually well above average. From the eye test, you're going to find out that he's actually a player that is a playmaker from deep. He's a player that doesn't really complicate play. He's a player that seems to be very direct when it comes to his creativity. He's not really an extravagant kind of midfielder, a midfielder that tends to play those kind of Hollywood passes, emergency passes, hastened passes. He's a player that is really reliable in possession, that's really reliable in creativity, and he's a player that can be able to play those first time these guys passes into the forwarders' feet, or is a player that can be able to play those core balls that moves around the central backs in open play, and he's really good when it comes to creativity. Adam Wharton is a player that can be able to be that creative engine for a team, and he can be able to detect from longer position. And one thing I like about his creativity is that he doesn't really tends to only create to go, or when he's inside the penalty area, he's the player that can be able to create from deep. One of his passes can be able to split low blocks, and you know that this is something that Manchester United has been struggling with a lot in recent times in terms of breaking low block scenes with a lot of through balls, with a lot of precise passes or these guys passes. I think Adam Wharton is the player that can be able to bring that element in terms of the midfield component of Ruben Amorim. So guys, let's actually move over to the tactical talk board of Adam Wharton, and let's actually try to analyze if he's going to suit Manchester United. So let's actually start with the kind of system he plays in Crystal Palace. We all know that Oliver Glasner doesn't press, so in terms of Crystal Palace, Adam Wharton doesn't seem to do a lot because he plays in a compact team and all the players are actually together most of the times. They don't really press. They try to create that war zone in the middle of the park. They try to make their midfield to be very compact as much as possible. And so Adam Wharton is definitely a player that can be able to suit Manchester United if only the system is going to be adjusted, because in terms of Crystal Palace, he doesn't cover a lot of ground. It is kind of defensive or central midfielder rather that likes to be in a position where the ball is going to be. He's not the kind of player that is going to sprint 50 to 30 yards just to mark the ball, just to win the ball. He's a player that is actually that likes to he's a very calculative he's a very calculated player that tends to be in the place where the ball is going to be rather than sprinting around the pitch and trying to mark this ball. He's a player that tends to go to a particular position where the ball is and try to win the ball very smartly, because he's not really that good in terms of man marking and in terms of winning high volumes of tackles. So I think when it comes to him playing in the Ruben Amorim system, definitely in terms of build up, he's going to help us in the possession box shape because he's press resistant. He's a player that can be able to build up from the back. He's a player that has a very good dribbling rate, so he can be able to take the ball from the lower patch of the pitch up to the top of the pitch. He's a player that can be able to glide throughout pressure and throughout tight spaces because he has a very nice first touch. And in terms of winning those second balls, he's a player that can be a bully most of the times. He can be able to win those second balls. He can be able to play when Manchester United tends to go direct. He can be able to win those second balls. I know that in terms of goal contribution, he might not really be the best in terms of goal contribution, but when Manchester United are out of position, when we are playing in the 5-3-2 shape, I think that he might not really help us a lot in defending those large spaces because he's not that kind of midfielder. He's the kind of midfielder that likes to sit, that can be able to detect in a slow ball progression team in a kind of control system. Is a player that can be able to excel. So I think in terms of winning a lot of tackles and interceptions, he might not really be the best, even though he can be really good in it, but he's not really that consistent and he's not really good in it. But overall, I think he's a player that can be able to suit Manchester United. So I want you guys to like, to share, to subscribe to Tactical Trafford, and I want you guys to also drop in the comment section if you feel Adam Wharton can be able to sit into the Ruben Amorim system at Manchester United.